Hey everybody, I'm back. And today we're going to go down I guess we're off to see the wizard today. There's a lot of people that really appreciate Santino's perspective and really appreciate him as a person. And we thought it would be cool if we had a precious metals focused discussion. I don't know how much I have to add to this discussion, but I'm gonna try and keep up with the sensei here. I'll do my best. I think he's got a lot of important information, and I can't wait to hear what he's going to say. How you doing, bud?
Hi, Moo. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Yep.
Yeah, great chatting with you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Well, I'm not really sure where to start. Why don't we give you an opportunity to just kind of set us off, put the ball on the tee, and fire us up here.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, well, I think it was the Chinese that said, may you live in interesting times. Well, we certainly are living in interesting times, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, precious metals is definitely one of those areas I seem to get a lot of questions on. Um, it's something that I have some experience in. And I just thought it would be cool if you and I kind of like just threw some things around and maybe some people can, if they gain something from it, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of people interested in your perspective for sure. I started out as and once again, this is not investment advice at all. These are two blokes just rambling, and you probably shouldn't listen to us if you're going to take any sort of investment action on anything we say. We're just exploring the topics or this topic as two friends. So that being said, when I was a kid, I started to buy silver. I bought silver pretty cheap. It always seemed like it was important. I was able to recognize the difference between fiat cash money and hard money, or some people call it God's money, early on. I'm not sure why that is. I was also attracted just to the cool nature of the coins, right? It felt like I was holding history. It would make me want to research history and where did this come from and why is this coin different and who is this emperor's face on this coin, things like this, right? So I was always interested in that. Love to kind of thumb through those books, those numismatic books at the library, and just kind of research coins. So that's how I got started to be interested in this. How did you grow to be interested in precious metals?
It's funny listening to you talk about that, about how you got started. I really sort of go into this, but uh, I mean, this is going to date me as far as knowing how old I am. But like I was a kid when the first real inflation of the last 50 years hit gold, which was like in 1980, and it peaked.
Yeah.
I forget where it peaked in silver. That's when the Hump brothers sort of, cornered the silver market and ran it up to $50. And if you can think about that, like in 1980, in terms of inflation adjusted, um, and it was, I can remember being a kid seeing stuff on TV of people lining up to buy gold and people bringing in their jewelry. And um, honestly, ever since then, it's just sort of captured my attention.
Yeah.
And then as an adult, as a young adult, I began to just invest in it and traded in it, and um, owned it physical, and every possible way you could own precious metals, I've owned them. So, you just, through trial and error, you just learn a few things.
That's really interesting because I was not old enough at that time to appreciate, 20% interest rates in the United States, 12% interest rates. Very interesting. So this whole PM market, right? This whole PM space. So I guess we'll just call it PM space. Like sometimes we talk about crypto space. It's got a lot of interesting characters in it, right? Of all varieties, shapes, sizes, and understandings. A lot of people watch YouTube videos these days, right? So,
I know there's a lot of these YouTube personalities that, I mean, their shtick is all the same, right? Like
yeah,
whether, I'm not here to disparage any of them. Some of
yeah,
them,
yeah, yeah.
may be very good, right? So please, like I don't know. I'm coming from a place telling you I don't know. So,
Yeah,
I, the narrative is the same usually on YouTube, right?
yeah,
The big reset is coming. Gold is going to go to $1 million an ounce. Begin prepping. Have water and beans and guns, the zombie apocalypse is coming. And I know I'm being a bit sarcastic, but I'm really not too far off with some
You're
of these
not too
guys,
far
right?
off, buddy.
Right. And by the way, they've been saying this for 30 years. The collapse is always around the corner. The banks are going to collapse. That's always around the corner. The dollar's going to burn. That's always around the corner. And it just amazes me that people still listen to them year after year after year. But I think what they rely on is new people, right? People just getting into the market.
Yeah.
But it's the same tired narrative by the same tired guys. It's their business to push gold and precious metals. And this is coming from a guy who loves precious metals. I believe in the story. So this isn't like I'm trust me. I've said, people have heard me say a number of times, I would trust gold and precious metals over crypto any day. Like it's a miracle that a guy like me has made it to the crypto side. Okay. So I'm coming from a self-reflective part. Okay. I was that guy, by the way, a number of years ago, right? Like not quite like these guys, but I was like, look, government is so corrupt like this. Like we've come off the gold standard and now we're expanding the money supply. Everybody's in debt up to their eyeballs. This can't last. The music has to stop because logically it kind of makes sense. But the music never did stop. They just changed the tune. All they do is they just keep changing the rules of the game. So you can either keep waiting for that day to come. Meanwhile, you're missing out on the 8 or 10 bull markets that actually are happening in the world while you're sitting, on your hoard. Or you can be real. You can be real about what's happening, right?
Yeah, I think that.
Ironically, I will say that a piece of what they're saying for the first time since I've been involved in precious metals, I actually believe that they will be right about some of the things that they're saying.
Yeah, I think so too. So let's go there. That sounds interesting. Let's talk about this virus deal, and let's talk about the General Industrials in China. I know you have some thoughts on that. We talked a little bit before we got started, and I think everyone else would like to hear about this as well. So let's go there.
So again, I'm old enough to remember the SARS virus as well. That was the last big sort of pandemic scare that came out of China, and it shouldn't escape anybody's attention that both these have come from China, right? So that in itself has a lot of implications. And as always, what history has taught me is that it's never the disease itself, it's the panic that it creates and the fear that it creates that then creates the cause and effect, which works on the economic factors, right? So
100%.
So, so here we are. If you're one of these precious metals investors and you've been sitting in precious metals for the last 10 years and you've watched precious metals base, right? Which they've been they've been building this large base. Essentially if you've been in the entire 10 years, what you're hoping for is one of these black swan events, any of a half of a dozen that are floating around on any given day, to gain traction and start the chain reaction, which then starts all the things that begins the move. Well, I'm not a microbiologist. I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know how much worse it gets. I don't know, does it become more lethal? Doesn't it? Do they contain it to, mostly to Asia? Does it spread, but it doesn't kill a lot of people? I don't have a clue. And by the way, nobody does. Just, nobody does. So somewhere between it's absolutely nothing and it's the zombie apocalypse, the truth, we're going to hit the truth at some point, right?
It always is, like you always say, right?
It's always like that, right? Yeah. So I like to focus on what's real, on what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So what's the reality? What's this thing done so far? Well, what we know is that it's collapsed the industrial metals, right? Copper has been killed, nickel, aluminum, zinc, all the industrial metals have been killed, even silver. Silver's down 5% in the last few trading sessions.
Yeah.
So what's been left standing? Bitcoin and gold, right? And the US dollar, and probably treasuries. So that tells you a number of things, right? So what's happening now is people tend to mix all these metals together, right?
Yeah.
They don't really understand what they're investing in.
No.
They figure, well, why is gold going up, but my nickel producer is going down? Because they're the same, but they're not.
Yeah.
There's important differences. Silver, the fact that it sold off 5% tells you that the wider market still views silver as part of the industrial complex.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to change, by the way, but I mean, we can get into that. But for now, this is what's happening. So it's deflationary. Its immediate effect, this virus, is deflationary. But what else is happening? What else is happening is that deflation scare is creating a liquidity reaction from the Chinese central banks. So they're already doing it, and they've said they're going to do as much as they have to. They're beginning to pump money into their system, liquidity into their system. What else does that do? Well, eventually it's going to torch their currency, which is then going to push the US dollar up, which is then going to push US assets up. So the scenario, that's the chain reaction that's already happening. Like, that's not in dispute. That's not my opinion. Right now, as we speak, that is happening. The question becomes, how far do we go with that, right? Now, you saw US stocks yesterday sell off in the initial, I think it was Monday, 500, it was yesterday, right? 500-point drop.
I didn't check yesterday. I think Friday was a extreme down day. Yeah.
Right. And I think Monday was the big drop, and then it's recovered. It recovered yesterday, right back. So what's that telling you? Chinese stocks have been killed, like the rest of the world's getting killed.
Yeah.
It tells you that the flight to safety includes US assets. And it's going to include gold and silver.
Yeah.
There's no way you can liquefy the market even more than it already is. Right. Trillions going into the market, and not cause things to destabilize. This is China, right? China produces half the world's durable goods. Think about that. Okay. So at the same time that they're experiencing, the world is worried about a deflation that this virus is causing, they're liquefying to prevent against that. Well, the cure is going to create another disease, which is called inflation, right? Yeah. So you can see how all that is interconnected. You're seeing prices inside of China spike. You're seeing agricultural stuff spike. Soon you're going to start to see, if they're not able to export their goods because they're shutting down half of their industrial complex, which they are doing, by the way. And let's say this virus continues to be a nuisance for another 2-3 months. Guess what? You're going to have a shortage of goods in the world, which leads to what? Higher prices. So at the same, they're liquefying to prevent a deflation, but at the same time, we're going to have pockets of extreme inflation. I mean, we can get into the interest rates and how that works. Bottom line is, I don't want to get into the weeds too much.
Yeah.
But this is all going to have a significant effect on precious metals and your Bitcoin.
That is all super interesting. What comes to mind is, maybe not virus, but the reaction to virus, right? You're talking about 1.3 billion people. They must take certain safeguards. We've seen in the past where these things can get out of hand pretty quickly. I mean, when I think about a modern country that has had a lot of experience, right, dealing with these pandemics, I don't know of any other country that probably has the experience that they do in dealing with these. So what I have heard is that they're shutting down, possible things like mines and some travel. But what I'm curious about are the factories, right? The factories and things like this. You're right. They produce a hell of a lot of goods, and they definitely mine more metals than I think any other country on the planet. And they also, due to their nature, don't necessarily need to report their governmental structure. They don't have to report like other governments have to report. So Any thoughts about any and all that? Sorry, I think I smushed a bunch of stuff together, but
Yeah, the truth is we don't really know what's going on inside of China. I mean, we can speculate, but there's some things we do know, and you're correct. They are definitely shutting down parts of their economy. Well, if people can't leave their house, if they're locking down cities of 11 million people, guess what? Part of your economy is being shut down. That's not, you know, that's not fear mongering saying that. I'm just telling you what's happening.
yeah,
Uh, so, and it's, I think you have to expect that that is going to have some kind of an effect, right? And the effects can be subtle, like the effects can be in ways that you don't perceive. You know, assets are all linked. This is our entire financial system is precarious. It's one thing is all linked to the next, right?
yeah,
So if China decides to go crazy, um, you know, just printing money, and they torch their currency, and they make the US dollar too strong, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Asian currencies.
for sure.
And so if, you know, one of the last big financial crises we had before 2009 and 10 was a currency crisis that started in Asia in the 90s. You know, they called it a contagion.
Yeah,
Asian currencies are linked.
yeah,
So if China does that, the Korean won becomes susceptible. If it becomes susceptible, the Malaysian currency, the Hong Kong currency, already a disaster. If they start to fail, that means a lot of other things are going to happen. I've said for a while, I believe we're going to have a super spike in the US dollar that they're not going to be able to control. That's where I think we're headed. And an interest rate scare that we're not going to be able to control.
yeah.
And I think what eventually really moves these precious metals markets and Bitcoin is a monetary event triggered by some black swan event. It won't be the black swan event itself. It'll be the panic that it triggers.
Would you say these markets, these precious metal markets, are precursors to? Can you see the movement there first before the headlines in the news, or are they lagging indicators, or both?
Generally, yeah, I've said this a number of times before. Like, what are the charts I look at to see if the world is like, to see if they're like, you know, are we really going to war? Well, I go to King Dollar and I go to Mr. Gold, right? And I check
Yep.
those charts. And if they're not really moving, that tells me they're not really scared, right? Right now, what's happening is they're not necessarily being bought, but what's more important, what's more telling is they're not being sold, right? A lot of
Okay.
times it's not just about the buying hasn't showed up yet, but the selling has pretty much stopped. That in itself tells you something, right? Bitcoin is getting a bid not because it's being bought, because it's there's no, you know, the shorting has stopped,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
That means that they're waiting. They're doing what I'm saying. They're
Yeah.
saying, let's see where this goes, right? Let's see what happens. Let's see how China reacts. Let's see what the reaction in the world is going to be. You can see already the US markets are like, people are going, we've got this virus that could be a pandemic. US stocks are going up. Yes. Why? Why is that? Because Powell is going to speak today. The Fed's going to speak today.
Yeah.
They're anticipating that he's going to say, look, given this new threat that we can't quantify, we're going to continue to ease. We're going to be on an easing pattern, right? Like, we're going to be in an easing trend. There's like, in other words, they're going to signal in a very subtle way that they're going to add more money into the system.
Yeah.
Stocks love that because there's an inflation. That's creating an inflation in assets. Great environment, by the way, for crypto and precious metals, right?
Yeah. For sure. Wow. So as you're talking, man, I'm absorbing it like a sponge. Like I don't even want to say anything because I'm just
There's a lot. There's a lot of people, smarter people than me, that have figured all this out as well. I mean, big money is acting in a way that reflects this narrative at the moment, right?
So let's take the temperature now. Let's take the temperature right now. So it's it's about 1 p.m. on the 29th of January 2020. Gold. Let's take a look at gold. So I want to see what this is telling us. So gold's at 1570. Um, any thoughts there?
So I don't have a screen up in front of me. Is
Mm-hmm.
that up on the day, or is that it's rel-
It's pretty even from UTC time.
pretty static, right?
Yeah,
So
from the open of the market, it's up, but from 24-hour UTC cycle, it's level.
right. So I think that's just basically saying it's reflecting what I said, that markets are kind of like they're taking a deep breath and they're not doing much of anything. They're not buying and they're not selling.
Mm-hmm.
They're waiting to see what happens. But my guess is that the risk is to the upside in gold, not the downside.
Yeah.
In other words, I don't see much here that where people are going to go, you know what? Geez, I'd really like to go into the weekend short gold. I'm not seeing that, and that's true of Bitcoin as well,
Yeah.
right? I'm not. All the shorters are being moved out of the market, out of
Yeah.
Bitcoin right now.
Yeah.
That's why it's going up.
Silver's at 1745. Once again, pretty static from UTC and the open today. So we did have, so all the metals kind of experienced quite a bit of a drop on the 28th. So 28th going into the 29th. So that was yesterday going into today. But you made some Dow Jones or stock market, U.S. stock market comments. So that's not necessarily incongruent, right? That one would
No,
go
they're
up and
connected.
one would, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they're connected. So if this narrative begins to pick up steam,
yeah,
I mean, it's just math. Money's going to flow into gold and silver. It just
yeah,
will.
yeah,
It's going to start, and we're so early in this trend. Like we're talking about a multi-generational move. And when you're talking about multi-generational moves, they don't happen overnight. It's a process. The
yeah,
transition process can be bumpy. It can be confusing. It can go on for months like this, where it works around certain key resistance levels. It's over it, it's under it, it fights that level. 8,900 to 9,200 on Bitcoin, that's that level.
yeah,
With
yeah,
gold, it's the 1550 level. With silver, it's the 1750 level.
yeah,
Those are the levels. That's where the battle is happening. Once those levels fall for good and they're in the rearview mirror,
yeah,
which I believe is not too far in the future,
yeah.
you won't see those levels again.
Let's talk about platinum. So give us a level that is a key level to kind of watch there. Any thoughts on platinum? It's currently 975. It looks like it did not bust through that 1,000 mark. Any thoughts there?
Platinum was just about to break out,
Yeah,
really to
yeah,
follow. It was just about ready to fall because it's responding to this inflate everything environment that we're going into, and it will, by the way, react that way.
yeah,
And then the virus happened, and so it got sold off along with all the other industrial metals, right? So platinum also, like silver, plays a unique role. When things really, really begin to get rolling, it'll be looked at more as a store of value than an industrial, right?
yeah,
Just like silver. But
yeah.
right now, they're treating it like an industrial.
Yes.
And so that's why it's being sold off. I don't expect it to last long. And I think when platinum will follow palladium's already had its breakout. It's been a remarkable breakout.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the palladium chart, that gives you, it's gone parabolic. That gives you an idea of where the other precious metals have yet to go.
Yeah.
It's unusual that it would be palladium that moved first, but that's okay. That's what happens, right? Rhodium is there as well. Rhodium
Yes.
has also moved.
So let's talk about that. Why so much pressure on palladium? Like, I bet Russia produces a lot of palladium. Are they playing with the supply?
Palladium is a complex market. First of all, it reacts violently to to shortages,
Yeah.
supply side economics. In other words, if you're short in the metal, it will be reflected in price. It's asymmetrical. It will
Yeah.
go up rapidly. If
Yeah.
you are, if the if the world is awash in palladium, it will come down rapidly.
Yeah.
So right now there's a shortage. There's a shortage because of mining issues generally. It's just not as easy to, there's mining problems in the world and a whole host of reasons. Also, the new economy that we're moving into, electric vehicles, all the diesel vehicles being taken off the road.
Yeah.
These metals are important in the construction of these vehicles. Cleaner cars, cleaner emissions. You can't do that without platinum and palladium.
Yeah.
So, and that is picking up. It's that, if you chart that, you'll see that it's almost itself is parabolic. The metal is following it, but it will also respond to a general inflate. All hard assets will
Yeah.
be bought in the environment we're going into. It's just responding earlier than others because it happens to have the supply demand economics working for it as well.
Yeah.
Platinum historically has always been more than gold. Rarely in its history is it worth less than gold.
Do you think that
So
presents an opportunity?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That is going to revert back to historical norms. The same way silver, it's like 80-1 or whatever it is now. The normal ratio to gold is like 12-1.
Yeah.
Like think of where silver would be now in price if it was trading at its historical value relative to gold. These are historical means that we will return to. It's just a matter of when. Right?
Yeah. Boy, we have really seen, so when you're talking about these cycles, and I'm not a chart person. I can draw lines and I understand how it's done. But I just don't find it that interesting. But I know to many it's the lifeline and it's bread and butter. But me being a complete dummy on some of this stuff, palladium was impressive, man, through like 2018 through 2019, right? I mean, I'm just taking a look now, we were at $850, right, in August of 2018.
Yeah.
It's currently 2267.
Right.
I wonder why there was so much pressure here, even, into this year or 2019. It's amazing. So the beginning of 2019, it was 1243, right? Up to
Right.
2268 today. So these moves are just incredible. Even back in, so the low for last year, 2019, or a spot in which it wanted to rest for a minute, looked like it was about June, right? June. And it's having this remarkable run. Just anything more to say about that? Platinum and palladium have always they've fascinated me, right? Like, I think I understand gold. I think I understand silver on a couple different levels. But platinum and palladium, I don't.
Yeah, they are fascinating. The whole platinum metal group is really a fascinating group of metals, and the role they're going to play in the future economy is going to be very interesting as well. We don't
Yeah.
have enough time here to cover it all, but
Yeah.
they're going to play a very interesting role. So I think, like the spike that's coming, the bull market that's beginning to emerge now.
Yeah.
I agree with Jim St. Clair. I mean,
Yeah.
now mind you, he's been saying this for a long time, but I agree that it's going to dwarf all other previous PM markets that came before it. And
Okay.
platinum and palladium will be the same.
So you think it's
And
going to be a Super Bowl?
I think we'll be experiencing a Super Bowl in precious metals at the same time we're experiencing a Super Bowl in Bitcoin and the cryptos. I think they're
Nice.
linked. I think they're linked in unique ways and special ways that get missed by many players.
Yeah.
And they're small enough markets that when the money arrives, they push them to extremes.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that with palladium. One of the reasons palladium is performed the way it has is because it's not a very liquid market. So if you want in, you're going to have to pay, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I looked at entering just the retail market on that. And I was amazed at the premiums. What those high premiums told me was for physical And I understand there's multiple ways to invest, but when I just did some look, I was amazed at how high the premiums were. That told me pretty quickly that there is a liquidity or supply issue there. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening there. That tells you that people will buy it. They just need to own it,
Yeah.
right? They just have to own it. And a lot of these producers and manufacturers that are producing these vehicles, it's not like they got a choice,
Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
need to secure. There's an actual. This isn't all just about investors, right? I mean, like there's actual real businesses, real industries that rely on these metals, right?
Yep. Industrial
It's the
metals for
same
sure.
argument. It's the same argument that I've been making now for the coming uranium bull, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is going to happen.
Yep.
That's a bull market that's going to happen, and it's going to happen because, nuclear energy they're going to be turning to it big time. They're already beginning to do that. They're building them in Asia. Like they're already building them. They're just completing them. They're having to secure more uranium. The price has been delayed in responding to it.
Yeah.
Fukushima knocked the whole market on its ass.
Yeah.
It's been basing, and
Gotcha.
it's been eventually going to come out. And when it does, it's going to be glorious.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be crypto-like, right?
Yeah.
But do you invest? Well, no. Like I'm not investing in any uranium yet. So I'll wait until the breakout. If I miss the first 10%, 20% move, that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know when that's going to be. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's this year or next year. I just know that it's coming.
Interesting. So on the 27th, let's talk about just hit on again that gold and silver ratio. So on the 27th, that gold silver ratio was 86. We're just right under 90 right now, 89.951.
Silver is just such a bargain right now.
Yeah.
Because look at that. That is an extreme ratio.
It seems extreme to me.
Yeah, and I don't have the chart in front of me, but I
Yeah.
suspect it's rarely been as high as it is now. And it won't take much, like a move to 70 or a move to 60 shoots this price up, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna have that. Like we're gonna have that. Like right now, the reason this is such a unique opportunity is because the virus has provided you an opportunity. It's knocked it down 5% compared to gold.
Mm-hmm.
So the market is simply just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They're saying, no, right? They're going, screw it. Silver is an industrial metal like all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Right. And they're overreacting. And meanwhile, they're buying gold. So they're making the spread even more extreme.
Yeah.
Right. There's actually ways to play this spread, which I'm not going to get into. And I don't want anybody doing it. But there's people that make a lot of money playing this spread.
Sure.
And if I was going to play this spread, man, oh man, would I be shorting the hell out of it right now?
Gotcha.
Because I mean, it's going to begin its descent at some point. It won't stay here.
Yeah. So I just want to circle back. I know you said you're not necessarily familiar with him, but I think he made an interesting Twitter comment the other day. PF Metals report guy, and he tweeted this just the other day. Of course, silver is down 5% from Sunday evening. Why would it be? Why wouldn't it be? Did you see the news about the massive new silver mines that will be soon flooding the world with physical silver? No? You misread that headline? ? So did I, apparently. So you can address that directly, or we can morph this conversation into how these markets do get pushed around. A lot of people are very concerned about manipulation and how these are moved around on purpose, and those might be two separate questions. But any ideas?
Yeah, the GATA guys were, Murphy and these guys, they were huge into manipulating of the PM markets and blah, blah, blah. Look, there isn't a market in the world that isn't manipulated. Okay, toilet paper is manipulated, right? Like when you go to the grocery store and you go shop, every one of those items you're picking up, its price is manipulated.
I agree.
Like there's no such thing as a free market. It's an illusion.
Right.
So I would say to anybody that's looking to invest in precious metals, get over it, right? Just get over it. Honestly, that's not going to help you. It's
not
like
going to help you, and that's key. That's key to understanding. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Keep going. I love it.
It's still it still responds to charts. It still responds
Yeah.
to fundamentals. It still responds to the things that assets respond to. Is it has there been some illegal stuff going on? Of course. That's why, look at JP Morgan was a prime example. I agree. They've had riggers there. They've been manipulating this market and rigging it. But, there's a fine line between what we call manipulation and criminal activity. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
What those guys were doing was outright fraud, right?
Yeah.
What they were doing with that market. So
Yeah.
now with the Trump administration in, it's effectively, these guys don't feel comfortable. They're not as brazen in their operations. And that has something to do with why we're not seeing the kind of selling that we are in silver. Silver is still comparatively a very small market, thin market compared to gold. So, some of these guys, if they got enough firepower, can affect it temporarily. But long-term trends are not affected by these guys. That's not what works. It's monetary systems. It's central banks. It's big, big things that affect the price of these metals. And I think I don't know what he was getting at. Is he trying to be sarcastic, saying there's not more silver coming onto the market, or is that his point?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there was not necessarily any development, any anything that happened to point to, probably other than manipulation or moving these markets around to cause it to go down by 5%. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So he calls it manipulation. What he's referring to is speculation. Last time I checked, speculation is not outlawed. If it was, we'd live in a central command system, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we want to outlaw speculation.
Yeah. So
if we did, our cryptos nothing would happen with them. Every crypto is a speculative vehicle.
And good point, because boy, he doesn't tell us about the spike we had Friday, does he? Right? When the virus was, and the scare was in full force, people were flipping out. You couldn't turn on a TV or a radio without somebody, or have any kind of conversation with anybody normal without them talking about this, right? And we had a nice spike on Friday. So was it just a return to mean?
Right.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yeah. All these GATA guys, whenever price goes up, it's institutional buying. It's all good. When price comes down, it's manipulation. The banksters are manipulating the price. It's just all nonsense.
And I appreciate that feedback from you. It validates a lot of my own thoughts. And listen, I know you love PMs. I love PMs too. We think they're really important. We think they're really important for lots of reasons. Let's talk about the importance of that. Yeah. Why are they always so important? During a war-torn, ravaged country, people escaping for their lives, trying to buy freedom for themselves and their family, you name it. But these things have always. So let's just talk about the last century. Let's talk about the last century. Precious metals were extremely important. Why were they extremely important?
I mean, there are others that can speak on this far more eloquently than me. And I would, if people want good sources, I would recommend they go to David Morgan for silver, Jim St. Clair for gold. These guys know more about these markets. They've forgotten more about these markets I'll ever know in my lifetime. So, but essentially, in a very simple way, the reason people turn to gold is because it's the anti-fiat, right? Yeah. So when things are inflating, currencies become devalued. And as people stop having trust in their currencies. And when people stop trusting their currencies, they need a hard asset that's going to retain its value. It becomes a store of value. And gold has always, since its inception, has always played that role. It's gone through periods where it hasn't, just like it has now, but it always returns to playing that role, right? We've seen this in human history, this bubble, this kind of action that we're seeing where fiat becomes everything, whether you're talking about the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, go back. It's all happened like this over and over and over again. Just people would rather, it's just easier to go on Twitter and listen to these guys on Twitter than to actually do some of your own research historically and find out what happened during the Great Depression. What happened when we stopped linking gold, to the US dollar?
Sure.
What did it do? That was the beginning of the inflation. That's been in place now really since before the Great Depression. What's the Fed's role in all that?
Yeah.
So this is it's a complex question and deserves a better answer than what I just gave you. But
Oh, I
essentially,
don't
that's
know.
why people turn to it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Your answer was pretty profound. History. Your answer
Yeah,
is pretty profound, and you're absolutely right. You want to know why this is important? It's all right there. Go look, right? That will tell you why this is important, and you still feel it's important in the age of hopefully soon flying cars and amazing technologies and ICBMs and computers and everything else, right? You still think it's important.
there's all these new uses for silver and for platinum and even for uranium, I believe, that I think has not been revealed to us yet. But there's all kinds of technologies that are going to need these metals, so they're going to serve that, and they're also going to play a role in what money looks like in the future. I think it's complex. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. I don't think anybody does, but it's not going to be one or the other. It's not going to be like everything's going to be crypto and no PMs, and everything's going to be PMs and crypto's going to die. Neither of those things are true. It's going to be a mix of those two things. Crypto is also similarly, it's the other side. It's the other side of the coin.
Yeah,
So it has uses in technology. It also serves as a store of value. Like, is
yeah.
that not the story of Bitcoin and Ethereum? Can
Absolutely.
we not see that we're already seeing that develop with those two assets now, that
Right.
they're acting that way, right?
Right. Very good point. So let's pivot to cryptos just for a second. And this discussion was supposed to be primarily precious metals, but with some of the things going on in China, do you have any thoughts about use cases for certain cryptos or ecosystems with this potential pandemic? And I need to say here that you guys have heard me rant in one or more places about how I'm just not buying this, right? The math doesn't show me that this is the zombie apocalypse. I'm sorry. And I'll listen to the virologists on these things. I'm not going to listen to talking head YouTube people. Is it going to have an effect? Yeah, I think Santino is pointing out some effects that it's going to have. Is it going to wipe out half the world's population or something? Absolutely not. Do you have any opinions on crypto or crypto related usage with this most recent virus issue in China?
Yeah, I think crypto is going to play a prominent role in the Chinese economy, as a remedy to some of the problems that they're facing, right? So let's take this situation, for instance. So here we are, this disease has come out of China, yet again, another disease coming out of China. They can't really tell us how it got started. There's a lot of theories floating around, which I'm not going to get into. Like you, I'm not a microbiologist, so I'm not going to go there. But I'm just dealing with the reality of what we're already seeing.
Yeah,
So, okay, the world already didn't trust China prior to this incident. They were already suspicious,
sure.
right, of China. You can bet this isn't going to do anything to raise anyone's confidence. So the Chinese are going to have to find a way, if they want to be a trading partner to the world, if they want to export poultry and fish and agriculture, and countries are going to go, how do we know this stuff is not going to make us sick? How do we know you're not transporting some disease through your poultry into our economy?
Yeah,
So the question becomes, what role does that then play? Like, what opportunity is there for coins and protocols like VeChain, which is already has a foot chain and has a foot into China, right? Through
absolutely.
China Walmart and all these other things. All the great news has been coming out. Well, I think people are missing, because I can see that the price is not reacting. So there could be an opportunity here. I mean, you talk on-chain quality control.
Yep,
Is this not screaming for on-chain quality control?
it's exactly what it
If
does.
For sure it does, right?
Imagine that. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
Like,
amazing.
don't, if you want to know, you know, let's just use poultry for as an example. Where was this inspected? By who? Where do we place accountability? You know, is it transparent? Can we trust it? America is not going to buy one drumstick from this country unless they can prove to you, right, that it's safe.
Yep.
Well, companies, protocols, on-chain systems like that could play a real key role in something like that. And it's not responding. People are not alive to it yet.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think you and I are right in line with that. I don't need validation once again, but I appreciate your thoughts. And it's so interesting when we line up, and we line up a lot on a lot of things. So thank you for that. I think we're going to begin to wrap it up. I hope people found this informative. Before we go, I'd like to get in. So we talked about recent history, and then you even talked about ancient history, right? And why have precious metals always seemed to be so important to people as far back as we look? I mean, as far back as we can look, they seem to be important. Why?
They really do have an amazing history in humanity. And they've been there almost for every step of the last leg of human, you know, humanity progressing, right? It's become a part of our consciousness. And if you can go back right to the ancient Vedas, the Egyptian mystery schools, the Hermetic prophecies,
Yep.
the great uh, Catholic scholars, St. Augustine, you name it. I encourage people to look into the role that gold and silver played in these mystery schools and these
Yeah.
mystery studies.
Yeah.
There's a mystical aspect to them that cannot be denied.
I'm glad
Especially,
you brought it to the woo. That you brought it there, right? So this is wonderful. So can we dive a little bit, like, what is the real importance of gold? Any thoughts there?
uh, there's many different, like gold and silver. When you talk about, you know, the Indian Sanskrit, you know, view and the texts surrounding the precious metals, they have a very interesting view on what they mean, right? So silver representing the crown chakra, the gold representing the, you know, the mid-level chakras of of action and the sun and the father, right?
Yeah.
Silver representing the mother and the feminine energy,
Yeah.
and the transmuting of energy, and silver has been used by the ancient sort of yogis and monks, uh, as a metal which helps them connect to God,
Yeah.
right? So you can discount all this. You can say whatever. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you what these ancient texts say.
Say for
Uh,
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, they speak for themselves. They don't
Yeah.
need me to interpret them. Um, and so there's something to that. And in fact, if you look at silver and you look at its isotopes and its properties, and you can see how, with the technologies, emerging technologies we're going into and how they're going to operate. I mean, they're messing around with quantum physics and consciousness. You can see very clearly how something like silver will play a role in that, perhaps even
Absolutely.
platinum, right?
Absolutely.
You know, gold plays a different role. Gold is more sun related. Gold is more of this earth related, right? So, but it also plays a role. But I think silver is going to have a unique role, very unique role. And you know, some other lesser known metals as well, in technologies that we yet have not been revealed or have not been conceived of yet.
Yeah.
So they play a special role in consciousness. That's my view.
I love it. And I concur. Santino, I can't thank you enough, man. Anything else you want to add here at the end that we didn't cover that you think is important, or people just may find interesting?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm watching things just like everybody else, and I know we all want cryptos to go up. I continue to believe that watching the Bitcoin 89 to 9,200 8,900 to 9,200 level is key. That if we bust through that resistance level once and for all, I think we're going to see some really good things begin to happen. We're only we're only probably a few months away from us really understanding where this market is going, in my view. And you know, the bigger alts will move. The big boy alts will move right after Bitcoin, and eventually it'll move into the smaller tier coins, with some of them popping here and there, sort of unexpectedly, and having good runs as well. So you're seeing a lot of popping here and there. The alts have been indicating for a while now that something's going on, right? They've been behaving well in a way I've not seen for a long time.
Yeah.
But just know, Bitcoin now has moved above the zone that has been trading in since the top of when we hit 14K. So it's now above that trend line for the first time. That is not an insignificant thing. That is a very significant thing. So these you know, people who are out there talking about new lows, and because they're always out there, these people are always out there. Listen, I could be proven completely wrong, and someone could play this back to me, you know, 6 months from now and go, look, at you were completely off. But I'm betting I'm not. I'm betting I'm not wrong. I'm betting that we're not going to see new lows. We're not gonna hit. We're on our way. If we can stay above this area, we move quickly. If we do some back and filling, then we've got some more work to do. Could be a few weeks or months away still. But if we get past it convincingly, we're on our way. So everybody just try and be patient.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Santino. And I would just remind everyone that, you know, language is important. I believe language is a technology. When there's going to be more traction by negative language, especially negative emotional language, than positive emotional language. This is just how it works. Thank you very much, Santino. I really appreciate it. And let's do this again. Yeah, soon.
Absolutely. I always really enjoy these talks, Moo, anytime.
Thanks, buddy. All right.
See you later.
Later.